right, welcome everybody to the 1BC podcast. I'm Nate. We got KJ and Matt here. Today, I believe we're going to be discussing new things that we have learned from Arcane and where we think the story is going. And if you can tell by Jericho Swain in the background there, I think Riot's been pretty clear that we're going Noxus direction next. So we have some Noxian themed backgrounds today. And are you trying to poke Swain up there?
I was trying to poke his raven, and then my finger just kind of vanished.
Disappeared.
He just kind of snapped my finger back out of the way, so I don't know.
He's trying to take your secrets.
Shit.
All right, so what's happened since the last episode we put out? I think Necrit's interview with the co-creator of Arcane
Christian
dropped
Linke.
since then, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of nuggets did we learn from that? Did you guys? I know you watched it, but
Yes.
I don't know if you watched it.
I actually did not see it yet, so
Yeah. So what little?
Are you
what
asking
little,
what nuggets we got specifically about Arcane, or like just the universe as a whole?
Sure. Let's just talk about anything that we learned from that interview. Universe as a whole, Arcane, whatever.
So he refused to answer the question if Jinx was dead, and
True.
he seemed really cagey about it. So I'm gonna say not dead. And then he also confirmed that there are 3 shows currently in development. And one of them has been for about a year. We are assuming that it is Noxus because of League of Legends coming out with their new 3-tier system or 3-season system for the game. And Riot seems to be aligning a lot of their stuff together, a lot of their media sources and the game. So it'd be safe to assume that Noxus is likely going to be our next show.
Yeah, that was the other
especially
thing
with-
that. Sorry, that was the other thing that came out is the League of Legends people talking about what's happening next, and with their 3 seasons, they were saying they want like everything League to be related to that season. So
They want it to be cohesive
exactly.
with the stories that they're telling.
Yep.
So it's likely that Noxus is going to be next, and then there is a Demacia and Ionia show also in development. I'm not sure what the order of the last 2 are going to be, but we can probably make some predictions.
Wait, a Demacia Ionia show?
Demacia and Ionia, as in separately.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, how does Demacia and Ionia connect? Like
Yeah, no.
Noxus
that.
would be the link to those 2 areas, but
I guess you could say like Shyvana could have some relation to Ionia by some metric, and then tie in Jarvan. But that would be like the stretchy stretch I could imagine.
Yeah, that would be really stretchy. One thing that the co-creator of Arcane said a lot in that interview was Necrit would ask him some questions, and he'd be like, I don't think I'm going to answer that yet because it's still fresh. And he clearly wanted people to explore the lore. And like,
Yes.
I don't want to give you all the answers right now. I want you guys to kind of figure it out for a little bit, and then I'll give you some breadcrumbs to like figure it out.
That's
Which I
the
thought was
impression I got as
interesting.
well.
Yeah, and we got this guy up here too, which we can talk about later. But
Atakan.
Atakan.
I would say just looking at the I was kind of looking at like the cliff notes where somebody typed up like a question and answers. He did say that functionally they had to prove themselves to Riot to make the show canon. So the show was not originally going to be canon, but because of its success and popularity, it became so. So a lot of this, like, a lot of the issues we were talking about, especially in like the last few episodes where we're talking about how the show breaks canon from what lore that we know, the shows are now going to be canon. Or as long as they remain good, I don't know, maybe Riot will like choose here and there, like, oh yeah, like the Demacia show was good, or like the Noxus show was good, but
I would hate
actually
that.
here's some tweaks. I would hate it too, because it would confuse people coming into like an MMO later on if their experience is not League of Legends but Arcane and the other 3 shows.
That would be like the Star Wars route. Like Star Wars picks and chooses what of their IP is canon after the fact, and it's very irritating. And I would hate it if Riot did that.
I was watching another podcast yesterday that had Mako, who does a lot of the music production with Riot. He was the executive music producer of Arcane season 2, and he had done some work on season 1 already. But he did an interview that I watched yesterday, and he was saying that Arcane was basically a proof of concept to Riot that they could make media that was good enough to be shown to the public, which is why they put so much into it to make it good. So if this is proof of concept, I actually expect other shows to be better than Arcane, which is not something that I thought I would say, because Arcane seems to be received as like one of the best animated things ever. And the amount of different art styles and like Easter eggs and passion that they put into it, I'm really excited if this is like the floor for what Riot and Fortiche can do.
Yeah. I would imagine that like the writing of Arcane is top notch, and I don't think that the writing would change that much. It would be probably animation style. Like they would take their time more and put more like discrete Easter eggs, right? And like work on the animation. I can't imagine that the writing gets worlds better than it is now, because it's just really good right now.
So maybe, but I feel like as many Easter eggs as they put in the art, they could put that many Easter eggs in the actual writing, knowing from the beginning that everything is going to be canon. So they can make references to stuff that doesn't happen even in the same show. It could happen in another show, but it's referenced by a character in this one.
That's true. They could have more weaving going on with the writing.
Exactly.
It also depends on like as the show gets like more spread out too, with the different like chapters that you have, the different like areas that you touch on. You also have to wonder if it's possibly going to get to like a MCU point where like there's so many projects going on that possibly it kind of like waters down the quality of the show. I know there's a lot of people that like really care and like are passionate about it, but like certain time constraints just like make the product suffer. And like we might eventually get to something like that, but like probably not for like at least 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Maybe when the MMO comes out and they try to like slam some shows down people's throats in order to like when it comes out. To like really get people as like an advertisement of like, hey, you love this show? You love Arcane? Cool. We got a video game.
Yeah.
The thing I will say to that is they have 2 separate teams working on their media. They have a live action and a animated team. And so it's likely that Fortiche is going to handle all of the animated stuff, because Riot bought a large stake in them a couple years ago, or a few years ago, I should say. So hopefully, unlike Marvel, they're more compartmentalized, at least with the like how they're producing the actual media. Everything is going to go through the lore team for like writing and stuff like that, and so that'll be more centralized. But I feel like it's easier to have a database inside the company for narrative that everyone can refer to and make sure that you're having like conversations for decisions at the high level, but still having the production of both the animated and the live action separate, so that the quality of what you're actually putting out will still maintain the same. So I'm hoping that Riot doesn't, or has learned from the MCU and is going to be able to take that on. Because like that's one thing that Riot is really good at. They're really good at watching someone else fail at something, taking all of the great things that they did, and then putting their own spin on it to alleviate the pain points that people have been saying. And so if they're going to do that in a similar way to the MCU, I could actually see that being a viable thing for Riot.
Yeah, that's the Riot formula.
It is.
Something else that we learned in that interview was the creator did say that like while they knew Arcane wasn't canon when it was being released, they never were thinking they're creating a different universe. So it was always like this could be canon but is not canon, is kind of how they were creating it to begin with. And he also tried to clear up some of the concerns that people had with champs changing, namely like Camille, Singed, Swain, all of that. He kind of helped show that there were plans for those champions and they were considering those champions all along. Talk about Blitzcrank too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Renata also was one he mentioned by name.
Yep, Renata specifically. Yep. He also, this is a bit of a tangent from what I was about to say, but he said that. So, during our last episode, the last thing we talked about was Jin.
Mm-hmm.
We talked and we said that Matt, you specifically said that you think Jin was the guy that made the shot on Victor's cocoon and all that jazz. And then Necrit put out a video saying that was not Jin. But if you go back and watch the interview, when they talk about that character, for one, they specifically show that the violin player in season 1 and the pianist in season 2 are two different people. They make a distinction that that's two different people. But when talking about it, the creator of the show kind of dodges the question a little bit and says because they're saying the violin player in the first season was kind of it was a cameo by somebody that worked on the show. They kind of put him in the show. But the pianist, Necrit was kind of asking yo, is this another cameo or something? I was like, I don't think I'm going to answer that kind of thing. So I don't know why Necrit said that's definitely not Jin, because it seems like the guy's kind of not denying it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I kind of like that we've talked about a little bit with breaking canon and stuff, but one thing we've never really talked about is a lot of the characters in League seem like they're a little bit older or more mature than they look in Arcane. Caitlyn and Vi look like they got some more years on them from where we left them. What if it's just the next generation of champions that come up? What if Renata is still in the universe and potentially was one of the small children that was shown at the revolution, and maybe lost her parents and that she's burning their names on the bridge and decides to become a Chembarian or associated with it? What if Zeri is also a little girl that was inspired by Jinx and decides to make a weapon like what she saw her using, her Zap gun? Or Singed is still in Zon doing experiments on Urgot. There could be a next generation of characters that they come back with.
Yep.
That they just didn't need them for the story, didn't really want to rush in a bunch of extra cameos. So
he actually did say specifically when the fans were talking about that rat that the Shimmer gets tested on in the very beginning of Arcane. Yeah. People were saying that should be Twitch. And he was like, you know what? That would make a lot of sense. That would be a really cool thing to do. But it's just not the story we were telling, so we didn't go there. So there could be these characters kind of hanging around, but it wasn't the story they were telling at the time, so they didn't go in that direction. So there could be parallel stories happening. It'd be hard to imagine because this was kind of a big thing happening to Piltover and Zon at the time, but there could be some.
I feel like knowing Singed, he gutted that rat and then tore it apart and used it to make more Shimmer.
I think it was actually in one of his jars when they show Oriana behind Deckard's head, I want to say.
Oh. I can see that.
One of the things that the Christian Link did say about Renata specifically, I don't know if he meant to drop this detail, but she is related to a Chembaron, as in a family member of a Chembaron. So to me, the parallels between her and Civico were already pretty apparent to me. And with you talking about things being next generation, it would not surprise me if Renata ends up being retconned to her daughter.
It's already in Renata's lore that she is the daughter of. No, I guess not Chembarons. Yeah,
no, that's just
not her lore.
It's
She's just the daughter of
researchers, right?
Yeah, researchers, scientists. It's very generic, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that he did drop is Hextech is definitely not dead. After the events of the show, he said that Hextech, somebody else will be picking up Hextech, or Hextech will be continuing in some way. So a character like Camille will still exist. Hextech will still be.
Seraphine.
Yeah, exactly. He also confirmed that Singed will be playing a part in the Ionian invasion of Noxus, which kind of leads us to the timeline situation, because we don't really know where Arcane fits in the timeline, but with Christian Linke confirming that Singed will have connection to the Noxian invasion of Ionia, that means that hasn't happened yet, right? I think that was a pretty big hint that hasn't happened yet, and that is still coming, or maybe is ongoing, and Singe just hasn't gotten involved yet.
So I think last week I had predicted that the crow, the demon
It's
that Raven. My apologies to Rom. That he had not met Swain yet. And that happens during the invasion of Ionia, the first one. And that was just kind of me spitballing, because I was hoping that we hadn't seen that part yet. Now that Christian has confirmed that Noxus has not invaded Ionia and they've not used these chemical weapons, that means that is not actually Swain looking into the aftermath of Hextech.
It's the Demon of Secrets.
Exactly.
We all saw like Swain's Raven kind of doing stuff throughout that whole time, but it wouldn't make sense if the Ionian invasion hadn't happened, because Swain's got to get wreckarooned and get disgraced and all that. I actually looked into Swain's lore today just to like brush up a little bit. And yeah, so he like finds a raven and realizes that the Demon of Secrets exists. So the Demon of Secrets was already hanging out with ravens. So that raven that we keep seeing in Arcane probably has no relation to Swain whatsoever, but is just Rom looking into things. Yeah.
Well, but it is going back with the Noxian ships.
Yes.
We do see that. So like it's at least following the action now that it has potentially found the like mutated Hextech gem that was
currently it seems to be
behind.
following specifically Mel. It's been following her since she left LeBlanc's hold and like had that long talk with her about who killed her brother and all this other stuff. But it's been following her since then. We see it immediately after when she's walking away from the Citadel or whatever temple that she was in. And then when she arrives on the ship in Piltover, we see it again perched on the ship. Almost every scene that we see Mel, there is that crow just watching. And then at the very end, after we see her like toying with her mother's mask, we see the Noxian ships and the crow is like leading the way. So it seems like it. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, it seems like it's following Mel for some reason, and I don't know if that's trying to imply that Raum is looking into LeBlanc or is working with LeBlanc at this time. Because we know that Swain and LeBlanc are supposed to have like it out for each other. At least Swain wants to overthrow LeBlanc in the Black Rose. So it would not make sense for that to be Swain and also hanging around LeBlanc. If it was like trying to spy or something, I feel like it would be more inconspicuous. But it's interesting that the demon and LeBlanc seem to be working together.
Yeah.
Or at least closely.
Or the demon is, maybe not working together, but keeping an eye on LeBlanc. Because we also don't see the ravens hovering around Mel until Black Rose stuff starts happening. So I think more than them keeping an eye on Mel, the demon is keeping an eye on the Black Rose, and then Mel becomes very tied in with the Black Rose, which is why it starts following her around. And Swain actually worked with LeBlanc in the past. Did you read this part of Swain's lore?
Yep.
LeBlanc actually got him to basically slaughter a lot of Black Rose agents to gain his trust. He ended up killing his own parents as well.
And LeBlanc.
Yes,
LeBlanc
allegedly.
was also killed, but was just an illusion. Yeah.
My prediction for next show is actually Jericho Swain is our main character.
That's what I was going to say.
Follow through his life as a normal general going through Noxus, and then up to LeBlanc starting the invasion of Ionia by telling all these secrets to the king, all these lies to the king, I should say, and then him getting his demon powers. That'll probably be like season 1, and then season 2 is the rise of Swain taking over Noxus and probably invading Ionia, and that'll probably lead to the Ionia show. That's the track I see, personally.
That would be pretty sick.
Who else is going to fill out the cast though? Because I know they don't like to do like
Irelia.
single character shows.
So you'll have
for like
you'll
the
have,
Noxus brand.
You'll have Swain, you'll have Darius. Draven will have to be there as well because Darius is the hand of Noxus. It's interesting that Mbessa brings up the Triforix, even though it doesn't exist. But I guess they could just be principles in Noxus and not necessarily how they rule their government yet. And then because Swain is such a nationalist, he's the one that like basically brings the principles of Noxus to the government of Noxus to make it more holistic.
Don't forget about Mel.
Oh yeah. It's weird to see what type of role Mel will play. She could be the stand-in for LeBlanc that dies to Swain and is like the person that's like telling him all this stuff. But it's hard to see where Mel would fit into the story, being that she's like a new character, and some stuff will probably have to get changed to include her.
And her like unique evolution of power that she has through the Black Rose / the person that Mbessa made her with that we don't know about. Like we have to see that story fleshed out too. Like there's no way they give us like these little bits of like the Solari aspect, tying her with the Black Rose, and then they don't like fill that out as a story. So like I could see like maybe like Swain and Rom trying to like steal that power for themselves or like consume it for themselves in some way to like amplify them. I could see something like that as well.
I could see her actually maybe not showing up as much in the Noxus show and moving her story to like wherever her father is from. Because I would think it's not a Noxian. And so it could be like in the Demacian show and or a Targonian thing that they actually show her lineage and kind of just show her like passing through the Noxus thing while they're telling this other story. Where she's like more like a minor tie-in. Like the LeBlanc could just send her off on like day 2 and like, hey, go investigate this stuff for me.
I could see that. I think just like how they ended the show with her in like the full Noxian garb that we've never seen her wear before, looking at her mother's mask and like then showing the ships and the Raven going back to Noxus. I feel like she's gonna have an integral part in a lot of the Noxus show.
I doubt it.
The Medardas got a lot of their power stripped by LeBlanc before or during season 2 of Arcane. Allura was looking into a lot of stuff about Kino, and she said that whoever they were against had stripped her mother of most of her holdings. Now that Mbessa's dead, and presumably her father's dead, and Kino's dead, Mel is the only heir to the Medarda name, which means that that's her army now, and that's I think why they were giving a salute when Mbessa died, because they have a new.
I think so. So if you Mbessa's lore is she had to work really, really hard after the old leader of the Medarda clan died to become the new leader of the Medarda clan. That's Mbessa's lore. So I think that with Mbessa dying, I think that there is going to be an arms race for the new leader of the Medarda clan, and Mel's going to have her work cut out for her. I think she's going to be too busy trying to lead the Medarda clan into the new, like, gain that power to be involved with greater Noxian things. I think that there's going to be an arms race
with LeBlanc because LeBlanc is the one that took all their money. So like if any other Medardas want the Medarda clan name, then they would be much more diminished than when Mbessa first took up the mantle, because a lot of their money and holdings have been taken. So I think Mel has to be the one to take it up, but also she needs to work with LeBlanc in order to get all of that status and control back.
I mean, it could also, they could not like Mel because Mbessa ruined the Medarda clan by losing all this stuff to LeBlanc. So the Medardas could be like, yo, we need somebody else. It can't be Mel because she's Mbessa's daughter. We're going to have the same problems with Mel. So I think that Mel's going to be too tied up with other things to have a big role in a Noxian show. That's what I think. Maybe some cameos here and there, but
for different reasons. But we come to the same conclusion.
Yeah. I think that Aurelia will have to show up in that show. If our assumption is that Swain is the main character of a Noxian show, Aurelia is supposed to be the one that cuts off his arm.
Yeah,
so
I
Aurelia
see that
would
happening
have to show up.
I see that happening like at the end of season 1, probably as like the cliffhanger is either him losing his hand and like being about to die, or him making the deal with Realm and getting his new life.
The demon Realm would be showing up in some aspect in that show. Borum Darkwill, which is not a champion, but is presumably in the time of Arcane the Emperor of Noxus.
Yes.
So would probably be having a large role to play there.
Scion.
Scion as well.
Katarina, maybe.
You don't think so?
Yeah, maybe.
As like Swain's like errand girl.
So, okay, hold on. I like that aspect. Not champion Katarina, but just kind of peasant girl Katarina. Like,
Well, she becomes her. Yeah.
Because Katarina becomes Swain's like go-to assassin. Actually, after Talon. Talon was the first one, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes Katarina. Because Swain, this is like further Swain lore that show might not get into. But Swain is worried once he has the power of the demon that it will overtake him at some point, which is why he starts the Trifrix, which is how Noxus is run. So right now, Noxus is run by an Emperor. When Swain takes out the Emperor, it gets run by the Trifrix. So it's run by 3 people, so that there's kind of a balance of power there. But also, if the demon was to overtake Swain, the other 2 could theoretically keep things running. And that's also where Katarina shows up. He's looking for an assassin that has the ability to kill him if the demon ever overtakes him. Swain's lore is wild. It's so cool.
I'm really excited about getting to see things from his perspective because he's such a patriot to Noxus. And that is like one thing that they really hammer home in his stories is that he will do anything and everything to make the entire nation and country of Noxus as great as possible. And even if it means to his own detriment, he will still sacrifice whatever he needs to do the best for Noxus. And I really like that. And having it's told from his perspective, regardless of what fucked up things that Swain does, I think it's going to be really cool.
That I like that a lot, actually. Because for one, to take out the Emperor and instead of naming yourself new Emperor, spread that power to 2 other people is a bold move. So
yes.
that would have to come from somebody that truly cares about Noxus and Noxus thriving. But also, with Noxus being such a warring nation, and it's kind of like the dark magic, like bad stuff area, having somebody that is super devoted to the cause of Noxus would paint Noxus in a bit of a different light than I think greater Runeterran lore kind of paints Noxus. Because Noxus is like, they're invading Ionia, and they're invading Shurima, and they're just taking over everywhere. And it kind of would put a different spin on Noxus and get people thinking a little bit. I think that would be really cool.
Other characters that we're definitely going to see, or at least my opinion we're going to see, Vladimir. And then I don't think we're ever going to see Mordekaiser, but we're probably going to see his armor. Because I think the Black Rose needs to be they're going to be like the villains of our show because that's what they're painted as in Arcane. But the thing I like about Arcane is that there's always gray area, and they always show like the dichotomy of what's right and what's wrong, and they blur those lines a lot. And the Black Rose does a lot of bad things, but the reason that they're doing it is to keep literally the death of the world and Runeterra, and stop Mordekaiser from like killing everyone and then taking all of their souls and using it to build up his own army.
They have a similar mission to Rise in that way, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, having the black, because we're already Black Rose is the most interesting. I don't know from somebody that doesn't know lore, but I would imagine the Black Rose is kind of the biggest question mark and the biggest thing pointing towards Noxus from
Yes.
Arcane. So the Black Rose playing a big role in the next show would make a lot of sense because that's the questions that people have. And then with the Black Rose being so intertwined with Swain's story, makes a lot of sense for Swain to be main character because we got Black Rose happening in the background, and then like at first Swain is a part of the Black Rose, working with the Black Rose, getting Darkwill to become emperor in the first place. Then Darkwill like renounces Black Rose. LeBlanc says, "Yo, Swain, turn in all these members, including your family and me."
Yep.
So then they all get executed, and it looks like, oh, we're like on the same. We already got ups and downs here, and then LeBlanc convinces Darkwill to like get Swain killed, so it's supposed to be an ambush mission, but like there's just so much going on with Swain and Black Rose and ups and downs, good and bad. Like it would be a very interesting show for that to be the case. Like it just has to be, right? Like it's so cool.
Also thinking about it with like the timeline movement, if you do start the first Noxus show with like an earlier timeline of like watching Swain come into that line, you could have it where it's like you see that Emperor rise, but also you bring Ambessa back. You could have like a whole season with her being brought back into it, and like sure, you know she's gonna die, you know her fate, and then Mel enters in like maybe season 2 of the show once they have like all the other character stuff established, but you get to see like all of that growth in another region in like the same timeline as the first season of Arcane. Kind of like a growth of characters for season 1, and then season 2 is like all of the chaos coming together.
Well, Arcane already had a bunch of time skips, so I think that is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really cool concept because they like Riot invested a lot into Ambessa, like releasing her as a new champion in the game. There's we've heard that there's a book coming out about Ambessa. Like there's a lot happening with Ambessa, so that's why I was so surprised that they killed her off in Arcane. But that would make sense if they bring her back for the next show because it's like a prequel and then a sequel kind of situation. That would be a really cool tie-in to Arcane. Because then we could also see, like, they could do cool stuff where we see Ambessa, like, leaving to go to Piltover, and it's like, oh, we know what you're doing. We know what you're doing there.
So the only thing that would make sense for me if that were to happen is, well, the timing doesn't work out, in my opinion, if they bring Ambessa back. Even if it's only for like one episode and they show her leaving Noxus so that we have a frame of reference as to where we are in the timeline. There was a lot of time jumps in season 2 specifically of like at least a few months. I would probably guess like 3 to 6 months of time. And so that's a long time to either skip between seasons of the new show and or like rehash things going on there, especially because we have to wait for all of Arcane to finish before Swain can get recruited by Noxus to create chemical weapons to invade Ionia.
Singed.
So like,
you said Swain.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I meant Singed. So depending on when they're going to start this Noxus story about Swain, and then tell the story of them invading Ionia before Swain becomes like the Swain that we know now, then there would have to be a lot more time jumps in that show as well, in the very beginning of it. And I don't know if that would be like as good of storytelling.
It is also possible that during the events of Arcane, Swain is Singed. You got me doing it now. Singed is already selling chemical weapons to Noxus, and Ambessa is just not aware of who Singed is. It's possible that he's already doing that.
I would push back on that only because it seems like Singed gets caught on purpose at the protest because he's running out of funding because people aren't buying Shimmer because Victor's curing them. And so if he needs money
Oh.
then he gets caught. And so then he finds Mbessa, who is a warmonger that wants the weapon. And so he finds a buyer to fulfill his research or continue his research. I think if he was already selling weapons to Noxus, then he would not have that issue.
Just depends on what they do for the timeline for the show. Because like I could see them doing like a young 20s Swain being roughly at the same time as like when Powder and Vi are kids and they're trying to ransack Jace's lab, and then they do a time skip of like his like military action, and they jump to more of like a 30 like more adult mature Swain, and that's kind of when like him and Bessa and like Darius are like the trifecta of running Noxus, and then she leaves, and then it just kind of continues on the story. Like they could still work with the time jumps, I think, pretty well there.
Swain can't be the leader of Noxus while Mbessa is alive because Singed has not invaded Ionia or helped Noxus invade Ionia yet. Therefore, Mbessa and Swain would never be ruling Noxus together.
Yeah,
because Swain would not be the leader until after Singed helps them invade Ionia and gets his hand cut off and then connects with the demon.
To avoid large retcons,
yeah.
It has to be Darkwill in charge the whole time that Arcane exists. So
Yeah.
the whole time that Mbessa is alive.
Yeah, but I mean, she brings up the trifecta, so like the Emperor could still be in charge, but then they have like a trifecta of like military power that like separately runs their system.
I think
she never calls it a trifurc. She said these are the principles of Noxus.
Exactly.
And so I think those are teachings that Noxians have, but they're not necessarily the way that they rule their government until Swain takes over. And with him being such a nationalist, he's the reason that becomes their guiding principle for their government.
Yeah, okay. I think with Swain being a Noxus nerd, he takes old principles of so he murders the Emperor of Noxus, and to stop people from rioting in the streets and being like, yo, this is messed up, like he's not my true Emperor, he embodies like core principles of Noxus, like old teachings of Noxus, and says like these principles basically are going to lead us from now on. And people are like, oh, okay, I can get behind that. Like, I think those are old principles. I don't think Mbessa's talking about leadership of Noxus in that scene. She's just talking about old principles of Noxus. And Swain utilizes those principles to give his new regime some authority. I've got a weird theory.
Okay.
So the Raven at the end of Arcane is picking up, we presume, or at least investigating, that gem that Victor gave Jace at the very beginning of Arcane, right? We kind of think that that's what's happening.
I don't think that's what he's picking up.
Oh,
I think
okay.
he's picking up something from that wreckage, but that gem seems to have disintegrated in Victor's hand because you see a bunch of ethereal versions of it explode out of his hand, and then they all kind of get sucked into it, and then it disappears.
Sucked in.
But the
entire thing disappears.
What is the whitish glow that is illuminating the Raven's face as it's digging through the wreckage?
I think it's the anomaly from Echo's time
Z drive.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense for it to be an anomaly than a rune. But go ahead. What was your theory? I'm sorry.
I think it is the rune. I think that it is investigating the rune, and my weird theory is that Jace and Victor are getting the darkened treatment. And Jace and Victor are sucked inside and trapped in that rune. That's my weird theory. That neither of them is dead. Neither of them went anywhere. They got sucked into the rune like the Darken got sucked in their weapons. They get the Varus treatment.
Okay.
Think about that.
It definitely blips out of existence. I just rewatched the scene. The last thing that they show is like the ethereal, like the rune on the stone itself, and then everything blips out. I'll take a screenshot of what I'm seeing.
The Raven does dig through Jace's hammer though.
Yeah, so it could just be a hex gem that he's taking out, but it would be the corrupted hex gem that now looks like the anomaly.
Yes,
from the future.
Yes, 100% agree with that. That's what I figured it was too. Was the anomaly like pure hex gem?
So
the one from another timeline too, which just adds another layer to it.
No. The Jace went to our timeline, or the same timeline, like the canon timeline, but in the future. Yes, he is now deviated from that timeline because he saved the future, but it was originally from our timeline.
So it therefore is a different timeline, because if he created a branch to a new timeline, it is a different timeline. Like timeline, branch, new timeline.
He went
old
into.
time.
I would say it's more like a clone of the timeline that he was in, and less of a different timeline.
He went into the future of his own timeline and then changed it to be branching.
Yes, so it is now a different timeline.
Yeah.
Depending on how you see
I would say now it's a different timeline, not then it's a different timeline.
Yes.
But the gem that he took was not from a different timeline. The demon is now in a different timeline and took the gem from the original timeline.
Yes. We're still saying the same thing.
No.
By adding an adjective onto the word timeline, you are saying it is different, and therefore we are saying the same thing.
Adjectives matter, Matt.
Which adjective I'm using? Oh, did you see the screenshot that I took? That little light blip is the last little bit of the gem before it completely disappears into nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry to poo-poo on your theory.
So I have a theory.
How baked is it?
There. That little light blip. I found it for you, squad. This is called production value right here.
You found it? Okay.
Dude,
I pulled it up, okay?
Okay, I appreciate it. But yeah, so I think it's probably the either a hex core or a hex gem or a corrupted hex gem that Realm is looking at.
Yeah. And the complexity of what that means is infinite. Like him bringing that back to Noxus, whether he has actually bonded with Swain or not, like Jesus Christ, the absolute infinite possibilities that could attribute to what that means.
I don't think that the Raven was picking it up. I don't think we actually see it grab anything. It's just kind of investigating it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's bringing that anywhere. It's just learning. It's just learning about it. Because Realm is the demon of secrets. And so it's just gathering all the information it possibly can. I don't know if we know at all what Realm is planning on doing. All we know is that Swain somehow starts controlling Realm and is using that power for his own agenda. I don't think we know what Realm is planning.
One of the interesting things about Swain's story is that when Realm was viewing his secrets, because as you die, Realm will look you in the eyes and it will see and be able to absorb your secrets.
Yep.
And so as that's happening to Swain also glimpses Realm's secrets. And so that likely means that Swain will have knowledge of Hextech as well, which may not be as widespread information to Noxus or anywhere else outside of Piltover Zon yet. Well, I guess because of the Hex Gates, they would need to know because they're traveling and stuff. But actually how it works and how to harness that power, that's something that Swain would maybe have now.
I think, I would be surprised if Swain tried to utilize Hextech and recreate Hextech. That doesn't seem like his vibe. Just the knowledge of how Hextech works may come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be surprised if there was an attempt to recreate and utilize Hextech. That doesn't seem
I don't think he would utilize it one-to-one, but maybe the power of okay, so we utilize these runes with this type of raw magical power, and we're able to do this. Maybe we can start utilizing this runic magic with Noxus's blood magic already and amplify it that way.
But I think, so the difference between Noxus and Piltover, though, is Piltover was all about technology and advancement and feared magic, mostly because of Heimerdinger. But Noxus doesn't have that problem. Noxus loves magic and utilizes magic for power. They're not afraid of magic in that way. As you can see, actually, right up here, we got a Hemomancer doing some work on something, but
So
Noxus
they
is
likely
not.
already have runes.
So they probably
cool,
already
'cause
have rune mages doing rune mage things in Noxus.
that was the big thing about Piltover too, is Hex Tech was arcane technology.
Yeah,
Whereas people like Noxus just have access to
they have
the
access to
arcane.
the arcane already.
Yeah, they don't need the tech. Like that's like the caveman translation because Piltover doesn't have it.
Right. Somebody like a Rise doesn't looks at Hextech and is like, that's the dumbest, lamest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But Jason's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I need this. This is the best that I got. And Rise like snaps his fingers, is like, yeah, your weapon just fell apart and is useless. Like, get that toy out of here. Is what Rise would say to Hextech.
I'm gonna break your other leg.
What do you guys think about actually being able to see Jarvan the First death to Scion in this new show? Do you think we're gonna get like some ancient Demacia stuff where we have Mordekaiser actually coming up?
I could
'Cause, like,
see it in like the same kind of storytelling way that they did. The most like refreshed one in my mind is the like paint the town blue, where all of like the Zonites were painting their hair blue, and it did like the rapid succession of storytelling. I could see stuff like that, where it's like maybe somebody's like telling a story of days gone by, and we see some like storytelling rapid images like that. But I don't think it's gonna be like more detailed. It's going to be very like ambiguous and like, hey, here's a visual image of like J4, Scion, Mordekaiser, like days gone by, but I don't think it'll get like into the like unique details or like entire episodes telling that story.
I think
so the reason
that,
I say that, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that Riot at this point is not. I don't know if they're confident enough to start telling new stories with their media. I think that just like they did with Arcane, they're going to be fleshing out stories they already have because they know that people are already kind of interested in that. And I don't know if they're ready to be like, okay, we don't know a lot about Scion and Jarvan the First, or we don't know a lot about some other story.
But he goes into the larger story because the reason that Darkwill starts going crazy is because of Scion's death. Because he is not, or sorry, after Scion dies to Jarvan the First, they bring him back with blood magic, and LeBlanc is the one that helps him do that. Yep. And then he becomes like a brain dead zombie that can't be controlled and just kills everyone. Yep. And so because he gets so upset and angry with that, he starts going crazy. And that's like the start of his downturn. And so if they use that as like the turn of when the turn of when Swain like needs to start coming into power is because of Darkwill's like madness through LeBlanc's manipulation, but it starts with Scion's death and then resurrection, botched resurrection. That's the only reason I suggested that be shown as like a part of the story.
You think more like not like a large telling of what's going on with Scion and Jarvan the First and why they're feuding and battling in the first place, more so just kind of flashback material to like, this is what happened, this is now causing the current emperor to go crazy.
Yes
exactly. I could see that.
Very much agree with that.
Because yeah, I think Riot right now is trying to tell stories that they already have. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that they're going to invest a lot of money that it takes to make a TV show into telling a brand new story. Because then they're relying a lot on the writers of that TV show. Whereas if they're just kind of adapting and putting a little bit of a artistic flair on stories that already exist, the writers already have a blueprint to go off of, and they're just kind of like, they're riffing off of what already exists.
So I will say though, with the first and second invasions of Ionia, we don't know the aftermath of the second invasion. Like that is where our forward progression of lore ends. With I believe it's the Awakened cinematic is the last portion of Ionia that we see until still here, and that's far into a possible future. So we don't actually know what how the Battle of Ionia shakes out. And we also don't know how the invasion of Demacia shakes out after Jarvan gets saved by Shyvana. So like, yes, they're going to tell stories that we already have, but the endings of those stories they have not written yet. We just know the setups for them.
And even then, like the loose setups, because they are recanonizing a lot of stories and like fleshing out characters with this show. I think like we're gonna see like younger Darius and Draven like getting recruited before they like become the pillars of Noxus that we see. Like Swain is older than them normally, so I could see more like a focus on him on season 1, and then maybe a time skip into showing like more characters jumping in kind of thing.
If we get a flashback of Darius and Draven, that is the one time I think we could see a flashback of Mbessa as well, during her time in Basilic.
Oh, could be. Yeah, I think they will likely, at least for the next show, try to utilize the Arcane formula again. So having like champions as younger, time skip to champions older, time skip to champions now. Like they'll probably do a similar formula to what they did with Arcane, just to make sure that they could do that again. And then the show after that, maybe they start getting a little bit more creative with the formula.
Yeah, I think that just has so much value with so many of the characters, like specifically showing a probably like a more optimistic but like extremely patriotic Swain become like extremely patriotic, and showing like the passion he has for his country develop as he gets older. But for me, I also want to see Draven, because he's always kind of like the bloodthirsty brother, whereas Darius is normally like very firm in his patriotism for Noxus, but also like, especially in some of like the other stories that they've written, which are not canon, but like still have some insight into the character. Like he's normally much more reserved and like tries to give people like a chance before Noxus just like rolls them over. Like he tries to be diplomatic and kind when he can. So I kind of want to see that development of just like the two younger brothers, and then suddenly like bloodthirsty brother versus like calming him down. Kind of reminds me of like Wolverine and Sabretooth a little bit.
He's not, I wouldn't say bloodthirsty. He's just very cocky and likes to show off in whatever ways that he can. And because Noxus is such a warring country, that's how it comes off. But I wouldn't say Draven's like super bloodthirsty inherently.
Dude, the gladiator battles, like there's so many stories about how he loves to be in these gladiatorial fights.
I think
and
he
just
loves
like take out all his
because he likes
opponents.
to show off. He likes to likes to be the best. He wants to be.
But murder is part of that. Murder is part of that.
No.
In the games.
The reason I disagree with murderous is because it's about the intent. His intent is not to kill a bunch of people. His intent is to get the most praise and admiration that he can. And since he's in Noxus, that happens to be by killing people. Yeah. He just wants as many views and likes as he possibly can get. And because of the place that he's in, that's the way he has to do it. I don't think that makes him a murderous person. I think that makes him a sociopath.
I'm just seeing Draven as Mr. Beast now.
Well, I was going a different route, but I don't want to go that dark. But yeah, killing is a sport to him. It's entertainment to him. He's just he's not doing it because he loves murdering. He's doing it because that's fun and
what the fans want.
That's exciting. Yeah. Whereas Darius sees killing, like Draven sees killing as fun entertainment. Darius sees killing as necessary for the advancement of Noxus. Like they are both killers, but they have different goals in it, you know.
I could see that.
Do you think we're gonna get any Riven in this Noxus show?
No.
She used to work for the Black Rose.
She did
until she ran away to Ionia with her sword.
Her weapon is a Black Rose weapon.
It is. So she does have tie-ins to both this show and one of the potential new shows.
I would say that we might see her weapon before it gets destroyed. That would be sick. It'll probably be in some dungeon somewhere controlled by the Black Rose. is what I would guess. But I think that Riven has a different story to tell and would not be involved in the Noxian show. Maybe the Ionian show.
Doesn't Riven get her weapon destroyed in Ionia? Like she takes it from Noxus and then gets it destroyed in Ionia. So like if we're gonna see her weapon before we see her, I feel like there would need to be some tie-in to like show that she and also the sword came from Noxus before we get her in Ionia.
Maybe. There's a logic there. All right, we're coming up on an hour. Is Matt, you holding on to any Jin stuff? Is anybody holding on to something?
Not necessarily. He was actually somebody that, like I said before, where we're talking about like kind of the next generation of the show, where, you know, you can say that's not Jin, but like maybe it's just the next generation that like his story is not specifically going to be told, but he'll be brought about later on through other means. Like the big ones that we haven't seen that are part of that area is like Urgot, Zeri, Renata, Camille, and who were we just talking about? Who did we just say?
Jin.
Jin. Like, I think their stories just like they haven't matured yet. So maybe those aren't those people, but I think they still have the potential to be.
Yeah.
It's just, bro, the way you set up the music, everything that KJ said with like, even if it wasn't the same character, it's like the violinist in season 1 into the TFT set where Jin's music was violin, into like the piano playing and the cinematic of Jin fighting.
And you looking
in that
up that
theater.
it's the 4th shot and
yeah, like I watched that scene like 3 times just to make sure that it wasn't some like weird bullshit.
I think he was being cagey about it because I think they're leaving that open to be Jin. Like maybe it's not Jin now, but I think the creator was being cagey about that question because maybe it is Jin, maybe it's not, and they want people to look at things like it was a canon 4th shot. And maybe it's a red herring, but it's a cool one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
I do have one like a random prediction about who we're going to see in Noxus that is not going to be a main character. It's just going to be a slight cameo during one of the aftermath of a battle scene.
It's
Karthus.
Oh.
Karthus was a body collector in Noxus before he defected and went to the Shadow Isles. So I think if we see anyone like piling up bodies in a wagon or a cart during one of these battles that Noxus is having, it could be a nod to Karthus pre-transformation. I don't think he's going to have any speaking lines. I don't think he's going to be very important, but they're going to have a nod to him.
Could it also be Yorick, though?
Yorick was a gravedigger, or specifically in the Blessed Isles, I'm pretty sure, before they turned into the Shadow Isles.
Why would the Blessed Isles need a gravedigger? I guess people do die there because nobody knows. Everybody thinks that the Fountain of Life is not real, even in the Blessed Isles. There's only a select few, only the like leaders of the Blessed Isles know that the Fountain of Life even exists. So I guess people do dive there. So I take it back. I take my face back.
Yeah, okay, he's the last survivor of a religious order from the Blessed Isles.
So character predictions way ahead of time. You're going for who, KJ? Who are you locking in?
Karthus. Karthus is going to have a cameo at some point.
Okay.
Karthus minor cameo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Lee Sin. Just because I feel like he could like fit in as like a blind beggar in Noxus as like an Ionian spy and potentially have some like cool fight scene where he kind of like ducks around and like takes some people out and then like vanishes away. I feel like he could like be the stealth person in the middle of Noxus.
So at least right now, he does not come into the Noxus story until the invasion of Ionia.
Yes.
So unless I don't know if they're actually going to show him in Noxus because of that. I think they're, because the show is based in Noxus and then they already have an Ionia show in development, they're likely not going to show any Ionian champions in Noxus until there's like a conflict arising. Like, there's not really a reason for Ionia to go to Noxus before Noxus goes to Ionia.
But they
Yeah,
also could
they-
just be in the region. Like, just like people travel. Like Mbessa went to the Piltover show. Like we had
Yeah.
Mel, who
That's
is
possible.
a Noxian. Like I'm not saying that like they have to have like major plot points. I just think that like I think he's gonna be like my weird person that shows up in the show.
Ionia very specifically focuses on Ionia and focuses on self-actualization. Like they're all about the betterment of self, and they're not getting involved in other things. Like their lore kind of goes out of its way to say they don't go other places, and that the first Noxian invasion was a complete surprise. Like they had spies disguising themselves as merchants to learn as much about Ionia as possible, and then they just like show up and just murder everything out of nowhere. So I don't think anyone from Ionia would be hanging out in Noxus, like even just on a vacation or something. I think that would be.
So my other one that I was thinking about was Yasuo, just because I was just like, I feel like he could just be wandering through a pub. You know, he's just walking down the street.
Yasuo's master.
Yeah. It could be Yasuo's master. But again, Ionia is so like Nate just said, Ionia is super isolated, and like very, very peaceful. And I don't think we've had, except for when Yasuo and Ahri set sail from Ionia after he fought Yone. That is the like one of the first times we see an Ionian leave their shores.
And that's because he's kind of being hunted in Ionia, so he's got to go.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's after the invasion, isn't it? Because Yasuo was there for the
Probably.
invasion of Ionia.
Yeah. Well, he dies in the invasion, right? Or his master dies in the invasion. Like Riven kills his master. Yeah.
And then and then he has that conversation with Yone, and then him and Ahri. So I think that's one of the first times that we ever see an Ionian leaving the island. So yeah,
people
I don't
visit
know if
Ionia, like Udyr visits Ionia, but I don't think Ionians typically leave. I think we're going to see Talon. I think Talon's a pretty safe bet that he will show up in the show. My cameo, like your Karthus cameo, would be we won't ever see them on screen, but I think we will hear about Master Yi. Because Master Yi's lore is when the Noxians show up, they try to take a specific place, and Master Yi chomps them all up.
Yeah.
By himself, kills an entire fleet of Noxian soldiers. So I think we'll get like a one-off line of like, we've tried to take this area, but we just can't seem to make any ground or something. We'll get some sort of a line that points to Master Yi's fucking them all up. I think that's going to happen.
I would love something where it's just like, yeah, we tried to take it. We haven't heard back from anyone. Communication went completely dead. We don't really know what happened out there.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, should we talk about the GOAT and something we think the GOAT got wrong?
Baker?
No, Necrit.
The League lore GOAT, Necrit.
I know.
Because Necrit, in his video talking about Act 3, suggests that the universe difference that Echo and Heimerdinger goes to, he seems to suggest that one branched from the core canon timeline by Victor not giving the rune to Jace.
Oh yeah, disagree.
Which I just don't
disagree.
think makes any sense at all.
Because how else does Echo pull the shard of Hextech out of the wall?
I think
Jace has no reason to ever create Hextech if not given that gem and saved by the mage.
If he doesn't get that rune, I think him and his mom die in the winter there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't think that that's where the timeline branches. I don't think that makes any sense. I think it branches when Vi somehow dies in that explosion, and I think that's the major branch of that universe. And I think everything else kind of flows from that.
the reason that she doesn't die in our universe is Jace is like trying to unlock the door to his office and can't get in. Vi hears it and then starts running away before the explosion that Powder causes like actually goes off. So either Jace never opens the door, and or like something else would have had to be the difference, I think. And it's probably really minor, but I don't
Or
think
like
it's possible that
Milo doesn't
Jace
get the
doesn't get
chair on
through.
the door, so Vi has to hold
Yeah.
the door. Because Jace gets knocked back by the explosion, so if Vi's on the other side of the door, she would die from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Necrit might have got that one wrong. Or maybe I didn't understand the video. But that seems to be what he's suggesting in that video.
That's what I understood from that as well. And I did not agree.
Thanks for watching the third episode now of the 1BC podcast. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed. If you're new here, leave a comment down below. We love those things. And we hope to see you next week. Peace out.